Hello and welcome to another edition of the Battle Royale podcast. I'm your host as always, Edward Jones, and joining me of course is the Professor, Mr. Stephen Palmer.
Hello, hello, hello.
Tonight we are on episode 3. Today's lesson is, as we today find out the fate of our class, having on our previous episode seen them being gassed on the bus while they're on the school trip, we now find them waking up in a mysterious classroom on the island in which their Battle Royale will take place. Now, this is obviously a scene where we get to introduce to a couple of new characters in the form of the transfer students, Kiriyama, who's in the film, he's the student who's playing the game for fun, and we also have Kawada, who is the bandana-wearing veteran of the games, who we're told is from the previous game and has now been brought across into this one. And we obviously get into their histories a little bit later in this episode. But, yes, Stephen, I mean, we're now 3 episodes in. We're finally on the island. And in this one, we really are reintroduced to Kitano, as he's known in the film. Because obviously he's named differently in both the book and the in the manga. And I have to say, this is a real sort of scene stealer for our good friend Takashi Kitano. Here, really commanding the room as these students wake up in this classroom with sort of no idea what they've got into, which seems kind of strange, seeing as this is like a big national event, the fact that every year the Battle Royale contest is held, and yet these kids are seemingly absolutely clueless of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that really bugs me about this film. We'll get past this soon. We'll get chapter 5 or 6. We'll be past this. But yes, they're all-round ignorance. I understand that some of them aren't. Some of them wouldn't know because clearly it's been set up. They've got other things on, like Nobu. I'm pretty sure wouldn't have had a clue what was going on. But we do know that some of them, at least one of the students, is a good student and must surely know and must surely have these things discussed. The teacher's clearly aware of it. But yes, so if I'm remembering this scene right, the kids sort of wake up, and my first question is, so they got gassed on the coach in our last episode, and they wake up. Some of them, however, are sitting in chairs and they wake up. So have they brought them in, laid some on the floor, and put some in chairs? I think they're going to wake up. I just thought that was really odd, and I really shouldn't let these things worry me.
It's really kind of interesting. It seems like because I assume it's the soldiers who've done everything. You can't expect Kitano to really do anything. I mean, he's been flown in private helicopter styles, so I would assume it's the soldiers just, for whatever reason, they decide to artistically arrange these kids. Like, our 2 transfer students are both sort of positioned like almost in like a Gemini sort of layout. They're both in the same exact pose, but on opposite sides of the room to each other, sort of facing each other. And then we've got, as you said, we've got some students who are sort of slumped over chairs, and others just basically been thrown on the floor. So I'm guessing that they were the students that came after about the 6th one, where they thought, oh, screw this, just pile them up.
Of course, but we do have that sort of, we do see them as a class for the first time. And the camera does quite a nice thing where it sort of it highlights the people that we are going to be our main characters, and also, as you say, brings into view, hang on, who are these 2 reprobates that are dressed in the most, well, they look like rejects from the Lost Boys, don't they?
I suppose you could say that.
They look terribly 80s, that's all I'm going to say. But it is quite nice because we get that it's not quite the school photo, which is all part of the paraphernalia of the film, but it's their first time, and a scene which will be only one of a few things I remember from Battle Royale 2, where they do something very similar.
Yeah, it's also worth noting the fact that the floor is completely coated with plastic, as though they know what the way this introduction's going to go.
As if they'd done it before, maybe.
Yes. And it seems like, because, I mean, we obviously just slip slightly ahead in this one. We obviously know that, Kitano's going to kill 1 or 2 of these students before they get out of this classroom. And it kind of makes you wonder, is it like this sort of thing where the acting teacher of the the class during this Battle Royale program always loses his cool and kills somebody.
Yeah, he's doesn't take much encouragement, does he?
Certainly doesn't. Now, I mean, let's first of all just talk a little bit about Kitano. Obviously, Kitano is one of these characters who's subject to some major changes, both in the manga and the novel. Obviously, in the film, he's known as Kitano. In the manga, he's known as Yomini Kamon. And he's portrayed as this like bloated, like sadistic, and really kind of cocky and arrogant villain who does everything he can to antagonize the kids. He cares nothing about killing them, and we obviously have several sort of scenes a bit later, sort of coming up in the later chapters, which sort of differ. But much like Kitano, I mean, he spends a lot of time, eating, smoking, and watching the monitors, and actually listening into the students' conversations through the microphones in their necklaces. Now, if we compare him to the book, he is he's actually kind of got more, I want to say almost like a Final Fantasy sort of style to him. Because he's seen as he's thinner. He's kind of like Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII.
Crime, that's a deep dive.
Really, he's sort of like the main villain of that thing.
But yes, I wasn't expecting that.
Okay, but yeah, in the novel he's known as Kinpatsu Sakamochi, and he's just this thin government guy. He's got long hair. It's bizarre how anime he's sort of like described, especially compared to like his manga counterpart. You would have expected them to be pretty much the same, but apparently not. But again, he's just he's really sort of wild. He's very sort of sadistic, and that sort of really comes across through the book, just how much he sort of enjoys his work. He's much more of a government man. Now with Kitano, he's just basically the substitute teacher who gets a chance to take revenge on certain members of the class, and we finally get confirmed where he got stabbed, because you've said in the previous episode it was the thigh, and I said it was the ass, and his first conversation with Nobu is, "You stabbed me in the ass."
I still think it's his leg. I think he's exaggerating. He's got issues. Kitano's got issues, as we're going to find out fairly soon. And yeah, he's inventing a history. Just needs to look at his scar.
So yeah, I mean, it's also in this scene that we find that the teacher that they've obviously come on the trip with has actively opposed the class's involvement in the Battle Royale Act, and look where it gets him. He ends up getting shot.
At the very least, it looks worse than shot, doesn't it? It reminds me of the scene, one of the scenes in Ring. When you finally see the girl is it Ring 2, where you see the girl in the car, and it goes in on her face, it's like that. This doesn't work well on podcast. That facial impression that I've just done. But,
yeah,
trust me,
it's certainly not a flesh wound this guy has suffered. He seems to be riddled with bullets. And this is the scene that's is in all the versions. But again, do you remember how we said back in episode 1 the scene of his Nahara's father being hung? And we said that was a really shocking scene when this film came out, because we'd not really seen that sort of level of violence, especially in Asian cinema. And then we have this sequence, and this would also be enough of those sort of standout moments of violence that I remember again being just super shocked. That it was like, wow, this is really graphic to obviously see. And I mean, obviously we can look back at like the exploitation cinema of the 70s, and there's much worse things than there is this, but because of the distribution we had, especially here in the UK, we just had not seen violence like this on film before. So
well, and we're about to see some more. I mean, I think that is the first time we get a sense that there's a bit more going on here, that this isn't going to be some kind of anodyne kind of drama. That sort of scene, often that's the if I think back to like Jello films and things like that, a moment like that would be the climax that would be the beginning of the unraveling. That would be the shocking moment. I know we're 3 episodes in, but that's barely 5-10 minutes into the film, yeah. And it's setting its stall out with not just only a sort of a graphic visual, but that's a really quite shocking act, because I think I guess certainly in Japan, where it's a society which is very based on status in society, and teachers are held in high regard. I mean, I think they're all over the world, really, aren't they? It's it's a job which comes often with low pay but high status. Yeah, to see a teacher shot, that would have been quite shocking. You know, this isn't a Yakuza, is it? This is this is the person that we trust to look after our children. Turns out, although it was being a bit inappropriate in the back of the coach earlier, I seem to remember. But yeah, that is shocking, and it sets us up very early on for where we're going to go.
Now, do you think that his obviously opposing this government order is the fact that because of his age, because he looks like a very young, newish sort of teacher, the kind of teacher that probably wear a waistcoat to school and be down with the kids.
Do you mean he hasn't yet got a jacket with patches on?
Yeah, he hasn't got a plaid shirt marked with cigarette ash.
I hadn't really thought of that. I'm just thinking of sort of the teachers in Asian films, in Japanese films. They either seem to be young or utterly past it and not caring. So I don't know. Are there any middle-aged teachers? I don't know. No, I don't. I just assume he's just a good teacher. But again, this makes no sense because they haven't been to school for months. This is not tallying with me. He's been claiming his salary for doing nothing. Maybe that's what they shot him for.
Maybe. It's just when I compare him to like Kitano. Obviously, Kitano was the teacher that they had before, and apparently that when he gets stabbed in the ass, it's like a year on from that he's reunited with this class. So I just kind of like look at the two, and it's sort of like you look at Kitano's character, and he's sort of like the older teacher, and obviously because he's sort of like been more affected by this. I mean, yeah, he's been attacked by one of his students. He's going to be down with the government act. I mean, anything that allows them to sort of get back at these little bastard kids who are just basically causing havoc. And he says when he's explaining what the Battle Royale Act is, which again is just astounding. He says, "You know what this is?" When he writes Battle Royale Act on the board, and like no one has a clue. It's sort of like, what's going on with you kids?
Him, maybe, maybe the government are right. maybe it's time.
Maybe you aren't actually as useless as Kitano says you are.
Yeah, maybe he's not wrong at all.
Obviously, with the proper introduction of Kitano here, I mean, obviously we see him in like full bluster here, as he is going to be throughout this program. I mean, how do we find him now, obviously, compared to how we saw him when he was just just a guy trying to teach? Do we see any sort of difference?
Oh my god, yeah. So before he looked almost broken, didn't he? He was staring at his blackboard. Student comes in, it's like, yeah, your mates have decided not to play anymore, and he just looked like a broken man.
Yeah,
couldn't really make much more of a decision about that, much more of an opinion about him than that. And then obviously we see him get stabbed. I'm going to let you have it in the butt. Now what we have is a guy that's incredibly confident, incredibly sarcastic. We're about to find out he's incredibly sadistic. He's got some.
He's wearing a gym teacher outfit, so
indeed.
That kind of makes sense.
He's got some issues. This boy has. This chap has to work out, because yeah, it's a kind of a mix, isn't it, of authoritarian and a bit jokey, really. It's just, he's full of personality. Everybody, all the soldiers in the room are just soldiers. I wouldn't be able to tell you who any of them were. Yeah, the kids are just snotty and annoying, and Kitano is the character in the room, and the only thing that's going to upstage him we won't talk about probably to next week. or next episode. So yeah, I find him to be 180 degrees different from the broken man we met 5 minutes ago, or 3 hours ago in our time. But yeah, for sure, just 180 degrees round.
Yeah, I mean, Dutton, I agree with you. He's certainly got a lot more personality, a lot more confidence about himself, and certainly we see him there throwing chalk at students for whispering and carrying on. He commands the room because he knows that he's like fully in charge of the situation here, and it's so much clearer. Like as you said before, when we saw him as just in his teacher role, that he has no sort of confidence here, and here he has nothing but confidence. It's like he's been given all the power. And I think part of it is also the fact that he knows that a lot of these students he's still holding grudges against are going to soon be wiping themselves out. So it's like many of his problems are all getting solved.
Yeah, I guess so. Or we say that a year's worth of festering over it. I mean, yeah, I think, again, we've talked about this before, but I'm pretty bloody sure that this is not a ballot. This is not a random selection. He has got involved with the Battle Royale program, and he has chosen this class, right? It's never said, but it's got to be the case, right?
I certainly feel that he's had a hand somewhere in it. I mean, certainly how involved he seems to be. It doesn't just seem like, oh, your class has been chosen, you're going to come in and represent this role for the government. He actually does, like you said, he seems that this seems a lot more planned than perhaps we would like to think it is.
For sure.
Now on to our two exchange students. I think we should really talk about them. And first off, we obviously have the student we are told later is playing for fun, which is Kazuo Kiriyama. Now Kiriyama in the film is the delinquent. I think that's the best way to describe him.
Yes.
Basically there with his very unique hair.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were going for that. He's got manga hair there.
It's either manga hair, a flock of seagulls hair, whatever it is. Yeah, he's the look is one where you just think that really dates this film. The school uniforms are kind of timeless, and other than what they're talking about and things like that, this could be any time between sort of 1960 and 2020. But those two fellas, especially this guy, it reminds me, I don't know, like last day of secondary school, and you all start writing on your shirts and untucking them and wearing your ties round your forehead. That's what it feels like to me.
School you.
Well, everyone signs your school shirt and stuff like that, and there's a sense of letting go. Whereas obviously that isn't the case with this chap, because he looks older, and I don't quite know how they managed that, but him and the other guy both look older, and they've been through this before. Again, when? Because the last one was won by that little girl, so. Help! Put some timing on this.
Yeah, he's certainly an interesting character. I mean, in the film, he's much more just of a straight psychopath, and I think that's pretty much established from the start. Although the depths of his psychosis are going to slowly be revealed over the forthcoming chapters. In the book, I mean, he starts off as kind of like a very sort of positive and happy-go-lucky sort of kid, because he's mainly in the sort of like the manga is really sort of emphasizes this, and it's really when he loses his mother that he also loses all feeling. Now in the book, his sort of loss of feelings more attributed to a car accident which basically like partially lobotomized him and basically caused him to lose the ability for basic human emotion, most notably remorse, as we certainly see in this. Now he's also said to have a genius IQ and is able to quickly adapt to any situation. And in the manga we also see that he's a gang leader, being introduced basically as as a sort of transformation of his sort of character. As part of him losing his mother, he becomes sort of more drawn into that lifestyle. When it helped really because of his lack of emotion and the fact that with his genius IQ, he studied things like human anatomy, so he was able to beat like a lot of the older boys in brawls. Which I have to say, I don't know how that works exactly. If you know human anatomy, does that like make you a super fighter or not? I assume it tells you good places to hit people, but you know,
I think that's probably the first thing you learn in anatomy is all the pressure points and the death. No, nonsense. This I mean,
it's like you're going to learn him here. Now let's go out and cause some damage. That's why everyone fears the anatomy students.
Because doctors are probably better than soldiers at fighting war. That's all I can draw from that. If we had an army of doctors, the island would be safe forever.
If you say so.
I'm just following what you're telling me, mate.
So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a shame that we don't get any of these sort of in the various sort of flashbacks we get. We don't really get any sort of flashback for him. He's just sort of reduced down to this sort of standard architect. The fact that, you know, he's just one of the crazies on the island, and he's one of really, I'd say, but it's between him and
that's the point you're trying to make. No, he is the most of the main characters, yeah, the ones that seemingly have a storyline here and a purpose, rather than just being cannon fodder. He's a blank slate, isn't he? He's just a nut job, and he's nothing more than that. I don't think we flash back to any backstory for him, do we? I think
no, we don't get any backstory at all. Whereas both the book and the manga, obviously having more sort of space to flesh characters out, really sort of fill in a lot of his backstory. But both him and our aforementioned veteran Kawada, they're both already in the class when this happens. They're not drafted in as transfer students, shall I say, as put that in little quotation marks. They're already part of the class. As I said, Kawada has been drafted in, and depending on which version you're reading, he was held back a year, which meant that he is accidentally drafted into the program. It's not because he's a veteran. Whereas Kiriyama is already part of the class. He's an established member, but he's really sort of establishes himself as this gang leader. He's got his group of followers, which we actually, there's a scene in the film that's actually reworked from the manga, which obviously pays sort of, it sort of gives this nod to his gang that he has. But obviously when we look at Kawada now, Kawada's kind of like a bit of an interesting one, because he's kind of there for himself, and you kind of get the feeling very early on that he's not really going to want to. He's not going to be the guy who's going to team up with anyone.
Yeah, true. I just remember something else I want to say, but you carry on.
Okay.
It'll follow because it's me picking at it again. But yes, he's probably the character that we change our opinion about the most in the film.
Yeah, I mean, you're never sure whether you're supposed to trust Kawada or not. And I mean, in the film, obviously, we play up his mysterious sort of backstory more. But right from him being introduced to me, he's obviously got the bandana. He's very clearly aware of what the situation is, and he's when you see everything that looks to him, he's just there looking at every single class member. He never pays attention to the front until he's addressed to, and he's just sizing up each of those class members as which one are going to cause him issues. And you can see that it's almost like he's trying to figure out who are going to be the ones that are going to go crazy here. You know, who are going to be the ones I'm going to need to avoid. But obviously the bandana hides the scar that's above his left eye. But he's one of the few characters that doesn't have any sort of major changes from depending on which version you're reading. He's very sort of set in who he is as a character. We don't see any sort of major changes between the novel version or the manga version. Although the manga version does obviously back up a lot of his claims, because throughout the film, I mean, he obviously makes these claims of like, my father was a fisherman, my father was a doctor, and that address all his various sort of skills and things.
Yeah, that's my favourite bit about the character. Later on, where he seems to be able to do everything, and they say, "How do you know how to do this?" And it's always because his father. Oh yeah, I can dress a wound because my father was a doctor. I can fish because my father was a fisherman. And he's actually one of my favourite characters because I feel, even though he has a sort of a journey in this film, but I feel that his backstory makes some kind of sense. I mean, some kind of sense, more than some of the stuff we've talked about. But yeah, I just, whereas with the other fella, I can't. He just, I know he's meant to be like some kind of force of nature or something like that, and he causes certain events to happen.
He's the demon of emptiness.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the novel makes so much more of his back. He sounds like, he does sound like a character in a computer game, doesn't he? Like a end level boss sort of person with a huge amount of backstory in the instruction manual that doesn't really come to play for anything.
Yeah, I mean, you had to sort of wonder. I mean, the fact that they cut so much out of like his backstory, like so many of the other students. Do you think the fact that they were trying not to just confuse things, they just want to keep this story as streamlined as possible when they were doing the film version?
For sure, you're limited, aren't you? You're limited to a couple of hours. You've got a key story you've got to display. You've got to concentrate, I guess, on the main characters. So some things are going to have to get missed out, aren't they? And that backstory that you've just described is so ridiculous and so so farcical. I'd probably have dropped that as well. In fact, if he wasn't the one that had killed most people, I'd have dropped him out of the film altogether, because it just feels extraneous compared to the exploration of the backstory of the other characters that we do get to explore.
Yeah, I think certainly when you look at the changes that Fukusaki makes to these characters, I mean, obviously with Kawada, you've got a little more sort of leniency with how you sort of go with the sort of direction that you go with these. But when you look at obviously a character like Kiriyama, that I think any sort of attempt to add a backstory to him is going to make you too sympathetic to his character, when you really want him just to be this crazy person. You just want him just to be this, as you said, the force of nature in this game, because you can, as much as you think, oh, these kids will work together, you kind of want the kids to be the ones who are going to be out playing for themselves, or just going crazy or having vendettas, because it keeps things interesting, it keeps things happening on the screen, and in the story. So I think by having him just reduced down to that simple predator sort of characteristic, I think certainly works better in the film, and obviously with the manga and the book, where you got most of the room to breathe. I think it adds something, I guess, but I think if you're reading those things, you've normally seen the film first, so it's sort of like more of a bonus feature for you.
The thing that really the circle I can't square is why they're made to be strangers, when in the other versions of the story they're part of the class. Oh my god, it's that nutter, the one that always sits at the back and is always late. I guess it doesn't make any sense because I haven't been to school, but you know what I mean. Whereas the story about 3 years before and the girlfriend that died and that kind of stuff, that makes sense. That could explain a transfer student. But there's just, I don't know, just weird that they decided to do that with these two. And I have another weirdness as well.
Okay.
Why are they students 6 and 7 or 7 and 8? because these class numbers are what you're assigned at the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah.
So what happened to the two boys that I would have expected them to have the really high number? Yeah, they'd have been extras. So that
Oh yeah, I know what you're
so
saying.
there's two kids that have gone missing. Where are they? What's their story?
Maybe they're like Otto and the Simpsons. They just died on a different school trip.
Yeah, that's.
They got clubbed to death by Confederate soldiers.
I did think that because again we'll talk about this next episode, but when all the kids are called out by class number, and it's quite deliberate that these two are called out together and quite early on before the film gets bored of going through all the kids.
Well, there are quite a lot. So it has to be said, so.
Yeah, there are a lot of kids, and they still call out quite a lot. But these two, I think they're 6 and 7. I seem to remember. I could be wrong. But it is just, then I sort of, on rewatching it, I thought, there's a mystery here. Where are the other two kids? But again, I
never actually noticed it until you pointed it out.
Yeah, and now you're wondering about them as well. There's a whole fan fiction of the missing two kids from Battle Royale. Which is why it makes more sense in the story. Yeah, in the novel. Yeah, absolutely, which is just weird. But never mind.
I would just go back to the point you were making about why they drafted these two kids in as exchange students rather than just having them as part of the class. I think in the manga, because all these kids are so wildly different looking from each other, they don't really sort of stand out. Whereas if you look at the film versions, they sort of really stand out. I mean, obviously one's got a bandana, the other's got anime hair. They really sort of stand out when you look at compared to every other kid in this class. They're all very sort of standard looking, all same uniform, all same sort of similar sort of hairstyles as to an extent, and they just sort of like stand out a little. By having them coming as exchange students and the fact they look so different, it adds that sort of air of mystery to who are they, which I think is was really appreciated. And so when you watch it the first time, it really sort of adds that, what side are they going to be on? Are they going to just be like, come in and just kill everyone? They're going to be like the government hired hunters for this game, so that if we don't play by the rules, we're just going to get hunted by these two. So yeah, I mean, the only other thing I want to really sort of mention is, again, to go back to a point you raised earlier here, and that's you mentioned about how they're just artistically arranged around this classroom. If we look at the manga, they're actually all in. It's more of a traditional classroom setup, so they're all in desks, and they'll basically wake up lying on their desks, which is a cool sort of sequence. But when you look at like the manga and the book, I mean, every single kid in that class has their own backstory and is identified. And while the film certainly does its best to sort of make them all stand out, we get those wonderful wide shots of the kids, and we're constantly moving back and forth between the two, but only one or two sort of are highlighted. You still get a feeling in the film that these kids aren't just there to be sort of cannon fodder; they are actual characters who you could potentially follow in this story. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a good introduction to what's going to go down to, on this island, and even if we are only 3 chapters into this project now, so
indeed.
Anything else you want to bring
up? Is that as far as we've got? Is that all this chapter is?
We are on number 3.
Oh my gosh! It's just like I said before, I'm watching this on the Blu-ray, and you haven't even got to chapter 2 yet. But no, it's I think it's for me, this is the beginning of the film. Yeah, this is where we see a dead body. We now know what this is about. We don't know exactly what it's about, but we had a lot of text early on, didn't we, telling us about the Battle Royale Act, but now shit's getting real, and we learn a lot more about Kitano and the class as a whole, and this is the last time we'll see this class together, and I think that's kind of important. So to me this is the real beginning of the movie.
It's the way you're describing it. It sounds like when we used to watch Bloodsport at the cable company, and they would watch the opening training montage and then skip straight ahead to the competition. But they'd skip over all the scenes of him making tea blindfolded, or having that really long, impassioned stare at the mantelpiece.
I can, yeah, I'm pretty certain I can think of films like that where I start watching it and then I go to my favourite scenes, and
It's like, oh, we don't need character development. We just want to see like him fight Bolo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've done this, but have you ever made your own little edits of films? Just
My own edits.
just put together the scene, the 5 scenes you like about it, and yeah, it's my favourite movie. I've watched all 23 minutes of it many times.
There are certain films that I do. You put it on and you skip to your favourite bits, or you catch it on TV and you wait until your favourite bits have come on. I mean, certainly Jaws 2. There's about 3 or 4 scenes that I love to see in Jaws 2. Arguably the superior version over Jaws, but that's another podcast in its entirety. Yeah, I know what you mean. There are certain films that you like to skip forward to the best bits, and I mean, obviously with the miracle DVD, we can now do that. It's no longer the case of you having to judge it by sound anymore.
No, absolutely. But yes, I'm really looking forward to the next couple of chapters, because I really think, you know, we've been in first gear, we're now in second, we're nearly on our way.
Yeah. Well, thank you as always for listening to tonight's episode. We hope you enjoyed as much as we enjoyed bringing it to yourself. You can obviously get in touch with us through our Facebook group, which is under our main show, which is Asian Cinema Film Club. We're also on Twitter, which is at AC Film Club, and we're also on Instagram as well under Asian Cinema Film Club. You can find our complete archive of episodes at our main blog, which is asiancinemafilmclub.wordpress.com. And while you're over there, why not check out our main show, the Asian Cinema Film Club, where every couple of weeks myself and Stephen check out a different Asian cinema film. We cover everything from the anime to the art house, Shambara to the absolute bizarre. We cover it all, so definitely go and check that out. And on our most recent episode, we looked at Female Prisoner Scorpion, which is a really weird women in prison movie / art house classic, and the first of the Female Prisoner Scorpion series, and definitely one that we had a lot of fun discussing on the show. But if you want to obviously get in touch with the show, you can do. We have our email address, which is Battle Royale pcast@gmail.com. You can also leave us a comment leave us a message in the comment section, and wherever you happen to be listening to us, please do hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave us a review, as it all helps raise the profile of the show. But make sure you join us next time for chapter 4, The Necklace. Good night.